Hi there, this is Noel again. So I am going to do a quick session on setting up a new activity for a letter. So let me just share my screen again. That should be coming up soon, so you should be able to see something sharing there. Okay, so I'm just logged into DebtView now. I'm on this landing page at the moment, but so what we want to do now is create a letter activity. Letter activity is pretty much the same as the previous hold activity that we created, but we do need to do one more step, and that's basically create the template for the letter. I'm just going to get, before we go into DebtView, I'll show you an example of basically a letter. So DebtView, when it comes to letters, there are different types of templates in the system, but for letters we use Word documents because it gives us that full kind of richness that you want to build for your letters. So pretty much you just build your letter as you would write any letter to the debtor. The template obviously is a reusable template which we can send to multiple debtors as part of a workflow, or just manually from within the system. But so what I've got here is this is just a standard Word document. We've just put an icon in for the purpose of the demo, just to give it a bit of color. And then what we've got here are some what we call placeholders. A placeholder is really it's a special kind of text that we allow you to write up, and then when we send this letter on a particular debt or send it to a debtor, those placeholders are replaced with the actual values. So the idea is that you have title, first name, last name. That should say Mr. John Smith. Address will pull in the address of the debtor. Again, we've got first name, last name here. But then there's also things like account reference, which is the account, the DebtView's account reference. You can also use your client reference as well. I don't know. Let's maybe put this in. Really, it's just if you're building these placeholders, these are all documented in your administrator guide. They're also in the system that you can get to from the system if you want to look them up. But when you're writing up a Word document, it's good to have that documentation available to see what you can put in. But the placeholders cover most things from like the name and address of the debtor, the current balance, what's due, if it's the payment arrangement, how much is due, what's next, how much has been paid already. We've also got things that are around dates and times. So this placeholder is basically saying please contact us within basically 7 days, and that should show the date in 7 days. Maybe you want to say to prevent further action. And you can also put information about the client, if the client or potentially the creditor. So our client name is another placeholder. But yeah, just about those placeholders of curly brackets. So it's two open curly brackets, placeholder name, and then close two curly brackets. Fairly straightforward. But yeah, we'll go through this when we meet again and talk through the training. We'll talk through those. That's basically it. So I just want to make sure that stays on one page. It's a simple letter. So we'll save that down to my local system. Let's call it that. I've created a few of these for demos. So okay, so I've basically created that letter, and now I want to get that into DebtView and attach it to an activity so I can start using it either from a workflow or from the manual screens. And the way to do that is first set up a template in DebtView. So first things first, we'll come in here, and there's a list of letters already that exist in the system, but we're going to create a new one. This drop down shows you the different types of templates. We're working with a letter template, which is the default, so that's where it will take you first. But later on, we're going to create an email template, and I think in the next session. So I'm going to create this one. Let's call it. What should we call it? Letter to debtor 1. Inventive, but so I just created this. This is the Word document. I've just saved it as a docx, and I can open that up and save it. At this point, it should just go and check all the placeholders that you've added on the Word document. If you put any invalid placeholders, it will prevent you from saving it, and it will tell you whichever ones that you've either spelt wrong or misplaced. It should give you that kind of information as feedback before you save it in. So that's Anyway, that's it saved. We've got a letter to debtor template. So that's basically our letters in DebtView. And now we want to use that letter as part of an activity. So just having a letter is one thing, but then activities, as we know, are key to DebtView, and that's how we execute our different actions. We need to go and create a new activity to use that. So we'll go back into this activity admin, and then down to our letter, send letter activity type. And we've already got some, as we know already, but I want to create a new one. So I'm going to go in, create a new one. This is the new activity screen. We saw this with a hold. It's the same. It's exactly the same. The only thing that really differs between types are the parameters on this page. But so let's give it a name. I don't know, letter to debtor. Call it the same as the template. It's usually easier because that's what you'll see in the print queues, those types of things. So letter to debtor. That's all I need to do on this page. Again, make sure it's enabled. You can place and hold on it. So if you sent a letter and you wanted to hold, every time you sent that letter you wanted to hold it for 7 days, you could put that there, as many number of days. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it as is. So here, the only thing that's required on this now is you've created your activity, you've given it a name, but you need to associate the template that you've just created. So it's letter to debtor that we call this one. So I'm going to save that down. We'll touch on filters a bit later on, but that's a way of filtering activities to at the client level, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, so we'll save that. And that's pretty much it. So we created a Word document, we've pulled that in as a template into DebtView, and then we created an activity, a letter activity, and associated the template that we created. And now in my debt, I might want to send that letter, so I could send a letter. I should be able to see my new letter, which is letter to debtor. If I execute that, it's just going to execute it. It'll send it to the liable parties on the case. In this case, this is the liable party. When you send a letter in DebtView, it obviously doesn't send it out in the post. It puts it out into a queue first. So the first thing you do when you send the letter, the activity gets executed on the account. So we can see that there's an audit entry here, so a letter's been sent, but its status is now queued, and that just means instead of sending it directly and saying it's complete, we put it on a queue because sometimes throughout the day you might want to collect all your letters up and send them in a batch, or send them to a third party to print and batch them. But also through the day you might want to pull a letter out because you might hear from a debtor. And so to save on those postal costs, you tend to put a process in place, do all your actual printing and processing at the end of the day once you know everything needs to go. So that's the reason why it goes on a queue, and then we can go to our queue now. So I've just sent the letter on this debt. It's queued it up, ready to go. As part of one of your internal processes, someone would go into the print queue, probably at the end of the day. And in here you'll see a list of unprinted, or what we call uncompleted letters. So I've got one letter on the queue. It's the one I just executed. This queue will group by the document name. So we called the document letter to debtor. And we execute it once on one debt, and that's why it's saying number of items here. But if we'd have executed that same template on 100 different debts, obviously this will be 100, and basically that would then generate a 100-page document when we generate the PDF. If we did 3 different types of letters, all with against different debts, you would see 3 entries here, and then the entries would represent the different templates that have been executed against the various debts. So basically you'll see 1 entry per template, and then however number of debts have been requested to have that letter sent will be the number of items. But we've got 1 here. You can have a look at the letter here. So I'll show you this way of doing letter printing. This is basically 2 buttons. One allows you to download the PDF inside the queue. So this is the simplest way. Just pull it down. This is going to go off and just generate a PDF on the back end that represents that letter. And we can see that this is our template. We put the first name and last name. There's not a title on the account, so that's why that's empty. And then we've got all those placeholders have been replaced with the actual information for that particular debt. So Steve Cooper, this is account reference. This was the client reference number that we added. That's their current balance, and then we added this. Our client, sample client, was what the client's called on this one. Again, that placeholder at the bottom was current day plus 7, and actually we can just bring this up and show you. Hopefully that makes sense, but you probably can't see that too well on the screen. But you get the idea that, you know, all those placeholders, we've got the current date there, place for the current date. We've got the title, first name, last name. Title's not there, but the address is pulled down all this information here. And then dear, first name, last name, account ref, client ref, current balance. And you can see that it's formatted anything that requires a date or a currency value. And that currency value is driven by the portfolio, which we'll look at later. But hopefully that shows you kind of how that templating works, how we associate that template to a activity, how we execute the activity in DebtView. And then once those letters have been executed, we come down to our print queue. We generate that letter, so you can either pull that letter down and print it. If there's 100, sometimes generating the PDF can take a while, so we can use a separate batching process to do that, which is this button here. So you can press the send to download button. So instead of sitting here and waiting for all that to be done and getting the PDF, it just sends it to the download center here. It does that in the back end, and you can come back to it in a couple of minutes. But you can go off and do other stuff, or you can execute. If you've got, say, 10 letters waiting to go, you can just push them all to the download center and then go down to the center when they've all been generated and you can download them from there. But we'll tackle that again in another session. It's not particularly difficult. It's just a separate kind of process. The final thing to do is just complete the letter. So basically, we do the print. Then we'd probably print that PDF and send it off in the post. And we're just going to complete the letter. And completing just says to the system, okay, this letter template's done with all these accounts. We printed it off. It's the print's been running. It's gone, and it's gone out in the mail. So what that means really to the account is that we're going to come back in and just see that now that case is no longer queued. It's gone to complete for that letter on that case. So it just completes that process. And if you have automated interactions with other third parties, so if you want to use a print house, you might want a print house per country to keep your costs of mailing down. We can integrate with those and even build in a return loop for that status. So if it comes back as an unknown address, that type of thing, we can update that status. But that's another integration piece really. Okay, so that's basically it. So we created a Word template. We created that template in DebtView, so we pulled that Word template in. We created an activity to represent a letter, action or activity, and then we executed the activity, and then we just went through that process of doing the printing. Hopefully that makes sense. The next thing I'm going to do is I think it's going to be an email template, which is very similar to this one. Actually, it's just a bit simpler because there's no print process involved. It's really just executing the email. Okay, thank you.